Evening and welcome. My name is Eric Ortiz. I'm the president of Lowry Hill East Neighborhood Association, or LHENA. Thank you for joining us for this LHENA Talk with Princess Haley. Princess is the co-founder and senior engagement officer at Appetite for Change, a nonprofit organization based in North Minneapolis that focuses on food justice issues and the food system in Minneapolis. During this talk, Princess will discuss the work Appetite for Change does using food as a tool to build health, wealth, and social change. Before we get started, I just want to review LHENA's online code of conduct. LHENA is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that represents the Minneapolis community of Lowry Hill East, also known as the Wedge. We welcome discourse, but we ask that everyone here be respectful when they speak or comment on Zoom and Facebook. Please respect the views of others without personal attacks. We also ask that you leave yourself on mute unless called on. If your comments are in violation of our online policy, a moderator will give you a warning. If your comments continue to violate our online code of conduct, you will be removed from the talk. Deliberately unmuting and causing a disruption, cursing, or the use of hate speech will lead to immediate removal. Nasise Galetta is the LHENA community coordinator, and she will be our moderator for tonight. We're looking forward to a great talk. This LHENA Talk is sponsored by Human Partnership. Human Partnership is a community-based organization in Minneapolis that helps men, families, and communities get healthy. Human consists of healthcare, community, and professional organizations working together to address the health needs of young and middle-aged men, particularly men of color. With a focus on medical health and community outreach, Human has empowered and equipped men to make healthy choices for themselves, their families, and their communities. LHENA has partnered with Human to conduct a community survey in our neighborhood, the Wedge, to assess the overall health of our community. Clarence Jones is a community engagement consultant for Human. He's going to tell us a little bit more about Human Partnership and their work supporting healthier communities. Clarence.
Thank you, Eric. Good evening, everyone. My name is Clarence Jones. I am the community health strategist for the Human Partnership. And the way we say human is every man has hue, and I love to say human. And even though we work a lot with men, we want people to know we really, really love women. So it's not that kind of thing where we just are for men. But we've been around for about 11 years, and as a community partnership, what we have done is we have developed relationships with organizations like University of Minnesota, Medtronics, or Medica, Blue Cross Blue Shield. Our goal really is to have a healthy community, and we do that through a coalition of collaborators. So we are more like people that convene the community together. Over the past 11 years, we have provided more than 200,000 free health screenings to the community using doctors and nurses and healthcare providers. But tonight, we are just honored that we have the opportunity to sponsor Princess Haley. I just happened to be talking to Eric and Paul, and they mentioned that Princess was going to be doing a presentation. They were looking for a sponsorship. They had our sponsorship within 30 seconds. And the reason for that is that Human looks for treasures within our community. And Appetite for Change and Princess for sure are treasures of our community. And so tonight, we're just honored to be here. We're honored to talk about our work, and we are just ready to hear what Princess has got to say. So I'm gonna give it back to you, Eric.
Thank you, Clarence. And thank you for sponsoring this and all the great work you're doing with Human Partnership. This half of the sponsorship money is going to go to LHENA to support our operations and help us to continue to organize events and programming and provide services to our community. The other half of the sponsorship will go to Appetite for Change. If you're interested in being a sponsor for a future LHENA Talk, let us know. We will put a link in the Zoom comments where you can leave your information. We're really excited about tonight's LHENA Talk with Princess Haley. She is all about creating health, wealth, and social change through food with Appetite for Change, so we can make our community better for everyone. Food is something everyone needs to live, but not everyone has access to affordable, nutritious food. In 2020, more than 38 million people faced hunger in the United States, including more than 12 million children. Due to the effects of the coronavirus pandemic, more than 42 million people may experience food insecurity today, including a potential 13 million children. Hunger can affect people from all walks of life. Millions of people in America are just one job loss, missed paycheck, or medical emergency away from hunger. But hunger doesn't affect everyone equally. Some groups like children, seniors, and Black, Indigenous, and other people of color face hunger at a much higher rate. Hunger also most often affects our neighbors who live in poverty. For a family of four, That means earning less, just $25,000 per year. In America, 34 million people are living in poverty today. Closer to home, here in Minnesota, more than 430,000 people are facing hunger, and more than 145,000 of them are children. According to the Minnesota Department of Health, Minnesota ranks 7th worst in the nation for the share of residents with access to healthy foods. Some of these people live in Minneapolis, and Appetite for Change is working to help them and change these numbers in a positive direction. Appetite for Change is one of the leading food justice organizations in the Twin Cities. Through youth and workforce development programs, social enterprises, and policy initiatives, they build community capacity to engage with the food system in a fresh and sustainable way. They have also served over 600,000 fresh meals and meal boxes throughout the metro area since the beginning of the pandemic. Our speaker tonight, Princess Haley from Appetite for Change, is going to discuss the local food justice movement, community well-being, how to create opportunities for people through food, and much more. Princess is the co-founder and senior engagement officer of Appetite for Change. She has worked in North Minneapolis as a licensed trainer and educator for more than 20 years and is passionate about working with families to build healthy foundations for lifelong learning. With Appetite for Change, Princess builds connections and nurtures relationships in the community. How do they bring people together to learn, cook, eat, and grow food, creating change that lasts? What is the future for the local food justice movement in Minneapolis? How can we get more people more food access so no person goes hungry? How can we create more opportunities for people through food? Princess will answer these questions and explain how we can empower our community to create health, wealth, and social change. Princess is a community leader in Minneapolis, and we are happy to have her as our speaker for this LHENA Talk. After her talk, she will take questions from the community. If you have any questions for Princess, please leave them in the Zoom comments or Facebook comments. We will have Princess answer as many questions as she can. Thank you for being here, Princess. It's all yours.
Thank you for having me. I am honored and I really appreciate this space and the platform to be able to share story, to really connect real people to real food, because that's what it's about. Paul, thank you. Eric, thank you for summing up. Listening to you reminded me of actually why we do the work. Thank you, Clarence, for letting me know. Like I said, the work that we've done in the community before lets me know that I'm still in the right space, doing the right work whenever I see colleagues like you. So thank you. And thank you to people who are viewing and attending to take this time to think about food and how important it is in the many movements that we're working towards. So Appetite for Change, the nonprofit that was started about 10 years ago when Michelle, Latasha, and myself came together, and as 3 people from the community or who had been in the community understood that the foodscape of North Minneapolis was totally different from what it was when it was lived in with the Jewish community. After the Jewish community left North Minneapolis, so did the fisheries and the bakeries, and 38 fast food restaurants happily moved in to service the Black community. And we knew we had ideas about growing food, we had ideas about food-based business, but we knew that the people who had been most impacted by the social injustice of having lots of fast fried food and not as much fresh and local food, that they had been dealing with the issue. So there was a jewel within their resiliency that we had to harvest. So instead of saying that we knew what to do to serve the community, we asked the community. We cooked and ate and talked with 400 community members about the change that they wanted to see. And that's why we say Appetite for Change is basically here to use food as a tool to create that health, wealth, and social change. We've created educational programs and cooking workshops, and we initiate policy initiatives, and we have social enterprises. And these programs help build our capacity to make that lasting change. The way that we created these programs came from the ideas of the community. When we cooked and ate and talked, it sounds like a simple thing. It sounds like dinner. It sounds like the holiday gathering that you have with your family. But it gave people a really comfortable space to share their food insecurities, their ideas around healthy and the solutions that they thought would help with those problems. So, meeting them in that space and knowing what I know now about trauma informed nutrition, creating a space where people can comfortably share about their food and not be judged and not have a finger pointed at them or not be shamed, allowed them to open up and challenge their own beliefs about fresh and local food and healthy food options and behaviors. So those programs that we created early on were community cooks. So that idea around cooking and eating and talking became our flagship program, our community organizing tool, where we created these workshops where youth and families and then new moms would gather and cook a meal and come together and learn culinary skills and explore nutritious ingredients and try vegetables and herbs that they had never tried before. Because often you'll hear someone say, I don't like this vegetable or that vegetable. I don't like leeks. We found out that people will say that they don't like it if it's something that they haven't been introduced to. So at Community Cooks, we would introduce you to rutabaga, artichoke, leeks, tarragon, turmeric. And then once people try those in a safe and comfortable environment, they're more likely to introduce them to their family and then their larger community. That Community Cooks became our community organizing tool where we found ourselves cooking with young people and talking about the amount of SROs that were in high schools or the policies around school lunch and the changes to transit or the number of housing developments that were being built in North Minneapolis that were not servicing young people. So Community Cooks, we love it. It's how you cook, eat, and talk about the change you want to see. That's how we use food initially to bring people together to talk about various discussions. In 2020, we started that Community Cooks Meal Box program in response to COVID and having to social distance. We wanted to bring that workshop aspect back into people's homes, being that we found that it was so challenging that some people weren't even able to get out of the bed to make a meal for their child, let alone allowing that meal to be something that was fresh and local and healthy or from scratch. So when we created the Community Cooks Meal Box program, that box gets delivered to your home on Monday morning with two very healthy recipes, along with the ingredients to cook them, and sometimes some pantry stuffers that you can have to use for the next recipes that you'll get the following week. Our workshops and meal boxes were really about creating that intentional space to share food together and have an impactful, meaningful time in your family. Doing that publicly isn't always an option and was removed from us as an option when COVID hit. And what we found is that the social connectedness is very important. So, how do you keep that going on an individual level in the household? You deliver the boxes to the home. After the first 30 weeks in programming, we observed an 8% decrease in households reporting that they had food insecurities after receiving the meal box. Since the meal box program has began, 15,350 meal boxes have went out. That's 184,000 plus meals cooked and opportunities for families to cook and learn and be introduced to a new food item and to engage with their families around food. That was 120,000 pounds of local chemical free produce into the bellies and into the plates of families that were being impacted by these many traumas. AFC also has a meal distribution program that came once we learned that our catering team was still on staff and they were ready to stay working and cooking meals, although events were canceled and catering needs went down. We also found that there were community organizations that were giving out meals after our grocery store, Cub Foods, which services 67,000 people, one grocery store, was closed. So what were people going to eat? They didn't have access to get to a grocery store in an area that was already overburdened with fast fried food and not having enough access to places where you could go and buy food. Now the grocery store is closed. Places like Brothers Empowered, Better Futures Minnesota, Oak Park Neighborhood Services, just to name a few, started to just give food away. And then they reached out to tell us that sometimes there's people left in that line who they have to turn away, who did not have meals. So Appetite for Change's community-based organization had the idea that we would get meals to those community partners so that they could get them to their constituency. And we know that gathering for meals is important, remember, but in a time where you can't gather, you still have to make sure that those ingredients are being made fresh and full of flavor when you get them out to the community members. We were truly serving a restaurant quality with all the benefits of a home cooked meal to our 26 partners and distribution sites across Minneapolis and St. Paul. And then there's the West Broadway Farmers Market. This is a diverse community-led space that offers fresh produce, local food, arts, and crafts from the North Side and on the North Side. It's an alternative to typical access points in the community where you can get food. The market goals to be highlighted this year, being placed at the Capri Theater's new development. We've partnered with them to be able to run our market there. From June to October, we're out there every Friday from 3 to 7. There's a few more markets left, so you can always come and check them out to see it yourself. But our young people are running our farm stand. We're selling food that we've harvested, and we have other local growers there, as well as food vendors. This is food-based opportunities and businesses. The same ideas that came from those 400 community members about how food could increase our ability to serve ourselves. Now, I talked a lot about how we cook this food and where we sell this food, but we're actually growing this food. Urban agriculture is a thing. We have 4 urban farm sites where we're growing 10,000 pounds of chemical-free produce a year, and it's supplying our meal boxes. We're using it for our catering events. We're using it in the Breaking Bread Cafe. We're selling it at the farmers market. We're getting it to other local restaurants that want to and that believe that food should be locally sourced. Now, what's going to happen, because we're in our last few days of summer, and as we're greeted by the beautiful fall, it just reminds me that it is now time to harvest all of the produce that you can from every garden that you know is growing. But there's something new on the horizon for Appetite for Change. For 2021, I'm excited that we're going to be planting and harvesting now in our new deep winter greenhouse, which will extend our growing season and increase the amount of produce that we can make every year. Our deep winter greenhouse, I believe, is the second in the city of Minneapolis. So that's located at 4150 DuPont in partnership with Salem Lutheran Church, that has allowed us to grow on their land for more than 5 years. And this year actually allowed us to erect our deep winter greenhouse. We also have a hoop house that we're in the process of winterizing. So we plan to do some growing there as well. And we have 2 beautiful storage containers that we'll be decorating and using to be a spot where we can actually process that produce and package it up and get it documented and get it shipped out. So we've created our own mini local food system, making sure that we have access to fresh and local produce. Now, who's our labor force? How are we handing this message down to our younger people? What's our responsibility to this intergenerational relationship and handing down that information and the tradition of how important it is to grow and cook your own food to young people? We understood that that was important as well. Our youth training opportunity program, or what we like to call YTOP, is where we engage young people in peer-led activities that aid them in development and leadership, organizing, and advocacy skills. These young people were once managing our community cooks events, running the childcare, hosting the stations, as well as working in the gardens, as well as training with neighborhoods now to actually become organizers. They are the young people who came to us with the issue of 38 fast food restaurants that are up and down West Broadway, and not a single place where you can sit down and enjoy a beautiful meal. They had the vision of West Broadway being a destination for people coming to North Minneapolis. They wanted to change the narrative and offer something else as an experience for people coming from outside of our community into our community. And they realized that there was a location that was open and available right next door to Appetite for Change's office. And it was their idea to open a restaurant. And this idea wasn't new. It came from what we heard when we talked with 400 community members, and they went to leadership with it. They talked to Michelle, like, how do we raise the money? How do we open a restaurant? We want a sit down restaurant. If there's a graduation or something to celebrate, we should not have to earn our money in our community and leave our community to spend our money. We want our dollar to stay in our community. And I think that serves as a good example of the impact, the lasting impact that's not necessarily quantifiable, to the type of culture shift on growing your own food and eating really healthy food when young people give you a positive response to a negative situation, because you've changed their internal environment. And in turn, they have a way of seeing that they have power to change their external environment. We also have Northside Fresh, which is right now currently working on Healthy Hungry Free Schools, which is a campaign to pass legislation requiring schools in the National School Lunch Program to provide breakfast and lunch to all the children. They're establishing a youth coalition, and with other Northside nonprofits, we're teaching the youth and activating them to be engaged in this policy work. Some of the work that we've done with young people post-COVID, we realized that when we cooked and ate and talked with 400 community members 10 years ago, they were very vocal. And after the many adversities that happened back to back, the community wasn't really telling us anything. And their silence was really loud. And the silence in the young people may have been the loudest. We understood that our young people were not certain if they were going to be able to go to prom or graduate or hang out with their friends. I heard one young person just say, I just want to be able to run down the alley and get chased by a dog, but I can't even go outside. Like those fun things that we did when we were children. And so we understood that our young people may have necessarily needed some time to do healing. We connected with Andrew Yu, and we taught an intentionality program, or she taught the intentionality program. And we also connected with Connie Rhodes from Restoration Inc., who taught our young, or facilitated healing circles for our young people. So we didn't just focus on them continuing to do the work, but we're talking about health, wealth, and social change. And when COVID hit and the uprising after the situation with George Floyd, we found that your health is your wealth. And so we wanted to really focus in on the health of our young people before we got back into programming and started to move these policy and advocacy. And I can see that the full engagement of the young people may come from that result of us taking that time out for them and with them. We also have, so the restaurant that I talked about earlier is called Breaking Bread Cafe. Real food for real people is the tagline. It's on West Broadway, located in the heart of North Minneapolis. I believe that Breaking Bread Cafe is offering real food for real people because the food is locally grown and the food is made from scratch. We're currently open Monday through Friday from 11 until 2, and those hours are going to be extended next week. So I would say check the website, www.afcmn.org, if you're looking for the exact hours. But if you're looking for global comforts food made fresh and from scratch, that is definitely the place to go. Our other restaurant and social enterprise is Station 81, which is located in the Union Depot in St. Paul. Station 81 is actually a part of our start to making sure that we're not focusing too much on just Minneapolis or North Minneapolis. Remember, we believe it's about real food for real people. So that means everybody should be having access to real food. And our twin cities, I've always known twins to be responsible to each other. Our work started in North Minneapolis, but we are looking to share that love and spread that message of good food in St. Paul as well. Station 81 gave us that opportunity. Station 81, I know, also has happy hour specials during the time that we have Saints games. So I would say check that out on our website to see the what we're offering at Station 81. I want to take a break here to see if there's any questions that popped up.
have a question for you, Princess. For what is the impact of all, you're doing great work with Appetite for Change, and what is the impact you have seen and the organization has seen in Minneapolis and across North Minneapolis and St. Paul through Appetite for Change in their work?
When you talk about impact, Eric, I could definitely share some numbers from the website, right? And what I'm learning in my new role is that to share the quantifiable impact is one thing, but to share that qualitative data is something else. So the impact that I've seen is that when you're working with food and when you're working with food, you're talking about one's culture. And if you're challenging what someone's eating, or if you're challenging or looking at or observing the health related issues that they're struggling with, and you talk to them about making changes within their food, especially for people of color, I've heard from the community that that message might often be received as judgmental. So you have to really meet everybody where they are. Everybody's not able to have a garden. You might live in an apartment building. So, really, being able to meet people where they are has led me to see the impact of community members that are doing things now like growing food for CSAs in their backyards, or foraging herbs that are growing wild and learning what types of herbs and medicinal purposes those herbs have. Having young people want to open a restaurant or challenge the Minneapolis public schools to reconsider their contract with SROs that are being put into the high schools. To me, it's the true impact has been that people in North Minneapolis who've been exposed to Appetite for Change, whether it's at the farmers market or if it's a community cooks meal box or a community cooks event, that the whole culture has shifted to that they are the person who has the power to make a change in what they want to see.
That's great. That's great. Um, Another question, for young people or anyone who wants to get involved, how can they get involved and start learning and participating in some of the things you're doing with Appetite for Change?
How people can get involved is really to, I would say, first of all, have a conversation with your family about food. Get in the kitchen with your family and let your young person do some measuring or some pouring or some stirring based on their age. I believe that really sitting to look at your relationship with food is primarily the first step. And then check us out on our website. There's a section where you could reach out and contact us and let us know if you're interested in volunteering, or if you're interested in wanting a meal box, or if you're interested in sponsoring a family and helping us get access to the families with the meal box. I do want to say that we've had great times engaging volunteers safely, because in a garden there's so much space, so you get to be more than 6 feet away from each other. And we had 700 hours of volunteer time last year, offering the community members who wanted to volunteer a space for healing in the garden was really what I felt like we were offering. Yes, their time and their attention and their dedication to our mission and their help was appreciated, but I felt like the relationship was definitely mutual and reciprocated, to have some conversations around safety and trust and fear, and where were we going and what is healthy was really important to me in a garden. So people can reach out, and or you can just email me, princess@afcmn.org. I would love to hear how many people hear this speak through LHENA and are interested in hearing about what Appetite for Change is having going on. And I love to hear about your ideas about food or share a recipe. You also can go to our website and sign up for our newsletter. I'm a very personal founder at the organization, and I want to say we all are, but I love to hear that story of how this story or this talk may have motivated you and your ideas around food. I'm never stopping gathering information. We talked to 400 community members. I'd love to talk to 400 more because there's information that I'd also like to share with you about possibilities and our upcoming plans for 2022.
Well, along those lines, of listening to the community, what is something or some things, surprising things that you've learned by listening to the needs of the community? And two-part question, why would you say it's important to be responsive to the needs of the community as the community sees them, not as they are prescribed for them?
What I found surprising listening to the needs of the community, as I came into Appetite for Change as a licensed teacher with the state and as well as a licensed life coach. And what I found that hearing the community talk about their relationship with food, it was almost like sitting in a life coaching session, because people would say things like, "Oh, my child eats fruit. They eat enough fruit. I buy a case of pineapples and I let them eat a can a day." And if you don't say anything, then you hear them say later on down the line, "But it's a lot of sugar in those canned pineapples. Or maybe I should get fresh pineapples." And doesn't the standard say eat fruits and vegetables? Why does it say eat fruits and vegetables? Shouldn't I eat more vegetables than fruit? So as we listen to people's food stories, and that's why I said, first sit down and have a cooking time with your family. If you want to engage, like, that's a great place to start, because if you don't reach out to us, you can start this work on your own individual level by just thinking about your thinking around food. I found that people knew what the right thing was to do, but had to have a space where they could challenge their own beliefs. I also heard that a lot of people had not thought about the term healthy until a doctor was sitting in front of them and saying, "You have to stop eating everything that your family cooked for you, and you have to start eating these items that you rutabaga or bok choy that you haven't been introduced to, and they're not of your culture." So that's why, and even to challenge the idea of, is growing food of your culture? Being a person of color, we've grown up growing food. Our grandparents grew food. And so, like, really reconnecting people back to their real roots and kind of demystifying those myths around it takes too long to cook. We would challenge new moms who had babies to use what you can and cook a meal in 30 minutes. And they would come up with some nutritious meals that tasted actually good, and they would swap recipes. The second part of your question, you asked, what did I find interesting? And then your second part was to ask, why is it important to ask the community instead of prescribing something? I believe, and I think that Appetite for Change believes, that people have power. You just have to have a place where you can operate that power. I know some programs talk about empowering people and showing them that they have power. We fully believe that you have inherent dignity and self-worth. And if you've been dealing with the situation that's impacting you, then you've been doing your best to work towards it. But to come to you and find out what you need to know or what you're looking for and where you think the gaps are, and helping you with that. I'll say it like this another way. I believe that change happens individually, socially, and systemically, and not in one particular order. When you can create an experiential learning opportunity for someone to experience something and then describe what they've seen and experienced, and then you connect that description to a definition, to like what the dictionary describes it as, and then let them know that they already had that knowledge, the definition of that word, then they can show it and model it to something else, like blanching greens. I've had someone say, if I get too many greens, sometimes I just boil them right quick and rinse them off and freeze them. And it's like, it feels good to have greens in the freezer for the wintertime. And it's like, oh, so it feels good to have that. That's what you experience. That's called blanching. Then they can go and share that information with someone else. I felt like I kind of theoretically didn't explain it too well. So just wanted to give that example. So the people have been doing the things, they just might not necessarily have the wording behind it. They've been cooking and applying the lessons that their parents and grandparents have taught them to do the best that they could to save food or to store food or to freeze food or to cook nutritious meals. They just don't know the language behind it. So when you meet a person where they are and listen to their experiences and how they explain it and then translate it for them in a cooking language, then they can go on and teach that lesson to someone else. When you find out what people feel like they need, you get buy-in to your program. You're not coming in and saying, you need to eat better. You shouldn't eat this. You should eat that. You should, my daughter says, you should eat peace food. You should eat a piece of what you know you need to eat to keep you nutritious and healthy. You should eat a piece of what you feel like will be comfort food, and you should be at peace in your mind about what you eat. And as a 7-year-old, she said that. But understanding what I know now about trauma informed nutrition, your mind state when you're eating your food has a lot to do with how your body actually processes that food and absorbs the vitamins and minerals from it. So she was right on point. And that's why I think it's important for you to hear from the community what they need, because they do have the power. They just need the place.
When you're doing this outreach and positive outreach with the community, have you seen any resistance to it from anyone? And if so, how do you overcome that resistance?
Really good question. I do remember one specific story of a peer that I invited to one of the earlier community cooks events. And when I showed up, I had dirt under my nails from harvesting in the garden. And I was outside on the block inviting people to come in and cook and eat and talk with us. And my tennis shoes were kind of dusty, and my locks were tied up in a head wrap. And she was like, I don't know why you growing food. Like, you could just buy food, can't you? Like, why do you do this? And I said, well, what are we going to do when the trucks don't come in? And then maybe 3 years later, I got a Facebook message saying, did you go to Aldi's? They don't have any food. I'm like, what happened? And she's like, remember you said, what happens when the trucks don't go in? She's like, I don't know what we're supposed to eat now. Now, that same young lady, like I said, is making teas and tinctures from herbs that she's foraged and is actually growing vegetables in her own backyard. So when you get that resistance, you truly have to let people travel their own journey toward food security and towards what they deem as healthy. You have to ask really good questions, and you have to let them sit and be comfortable where they are. You don't challenge or push, or you don't should on people and tell them what they should be doing or compare them to you. You plant the seed just like in the garden. You water it, you nurture it just like in the garden, and you wait on it to you wait on it to grow. And then when you see it growing, you tend to it, you talk to it just like you would in the garden. And then when it produces fruit, you harvest and you reap the benefit. And then you remind that person, because they've made that individual change, you plant the seed within that person to go ahead and share that message with someone in their family. And then that's how it socially starts to change. And then after that social change happens in their area, then they can all come together with us to challenge the system about the food in our schools, about the 38 fast food restaurants. So you allow them to be where they are, meet them where they at, let them know you believe in real food, and say, you like real food, raise your hand. And you're for real people. And you say, are you a real person? And they raise their hand. And that does not separate us. That truly connects us. As hard as we try to define this line between us based on our hue or our zip code or the amount of money that we make, food is what blurs the lines. And you just let people be where they are, and then they eventually come over to the real food for real people side.
In the time you've been working on with Appetite for Change, how have you seen the community change its relationship to food?
I have seen the relationship change because people are valuing the gardens. I'm seeing the relationship change in the conversations I'm hearing people have around at food giveaways, and when they're walking down the street past the gardens, I'm seeing the relationship to food change when people are saying, oh, I like Cub Foods better now, because after Cub closed, well, let's go back. Before Cub Food closed, the community was challenging Cub to make some changes because our Cub grocery store didn't look like the one in other communities. And when we were asking the community, okay, it's two-part. We've asked the system to change Cub Foods to offer more produce and not 48 sugary offers, more times than other Cubs. Like, we don't need donuts by our milk and donuts on the end caps and donuts by the Pampers. We just need, you to offer us the same thing you offer other people in other communities. But the second part of that was for us to let the community know, you vote with your dollar. Like, if you're supporting this and you're buying this, then they're going to continue to offer it. So when Cub Food closed, I believe that some of the work that we did from that movement with the Cub Food Action, and along with community members saying something to Cub Foods about the way they were set up, which could have been a response from the work that we did years ago in planting that seed and asking that question. I've heard the community start to tell me, because they're thinking about their relationship with food, is this food on West Broadway, these 38 fast food restaurants, here because we eat it, or do we just eat it because it's here? So truly, community members are reaching out. They're wanting to have more food-based businesses. They're looking at their own skills and duties and what they do in their household that's like second nature in their culture, to bake a cake from scratch or make a good seasoning salt from scratch. They're looking at that and seeing that as an opportunity where they can generate some revenue and create a food-based business. They're looking at their relationship at food as if it's gonna be in their life. So let it be important, prioritize it, make sure you're doing your best, and maybe you can even generate some revenue in a food-based business, because like we said in the Grow Food video, my people gotta eat.
Exactly. And how do you think, hunger is such a big problem still in America and in Minnesota and Minneapolis. How do you think, are you optimistic that we can end hunger, or how do we get more people fed to get closer to ending hunger?
I am optimistic. I couldn't be a co-founder of an organization leading the food justice movement like Appetite for Change if I didn't have hope. I do believe that there's a way to, so to speak, wean yourself from the codependency of the system providing food to you. Because often, and we saw especially when COVID hit, that people were running to the grocery store to stock up on shelf stable food because you might not be able to get food anywhere else. So when you have that food insecurity and you don't know when you're going to eat again, you tend to overconsume and overeat. But when you have access to something, when you have access to it and it's abundant, you tend to just consume what you need and to make your body feel good and give you energy. And then that's your portion. And then maybe you can save some or share some. So when I think about hunger, and this is my idea personally, I think about we have big food offering us food because they are too trying to solve a problem. But you have people who go out and hoard all those resources because maybe they have more money to purchase certain things. And then you have people who grow food. And are you growing enough food just for you and your family? Or are you growing enough food for your local community? Can you grow and distribute that food? Because there's an imbalance. And if we can get it into balance where there's a certain time where you can grow your food and share it with your social circle, then we don't have to put such a strain on big food to create more food. Because a part of that hunger piece is food waste as well. Like, how much food are we actually using? How much food do we buy that we actually consume? How much food do we grow that we can actually distribute? So I just think that we can, but I feel like it's going to take for each person individually to look at what they need to consume and see where can they supplement their shopping budget with actually growing some of their own food items? Do we have to throw away the bottom stems to the greens? What can they be used for? I like to chop mine up and freeze them because they're great soup thickeners, they're great bean thickeners. But in my family, they often took the stem of the green off and tossed it away. So just looking at small individual things like that and coming together with a community that's talking about food as a foundational principle to these other social injustices we're facing, and then to socially, I mean, to systemically come together with big food to come up with a plan to take a little load off of them, I think is one way that, of the many ways that I've heard other organizers that I work with talk about how we can face hunger, but I do think there's enough people working on it to the point where we can make a change.
Along those lines, is Appetite for Change advocating for policy initiatives at the local or state level that address hunger and or food justice? And if so, what are those initiatives and what potential impacts could they have?
Well, just to go back a little bit, we started out serving produce or serving snacks of mango salsa in front of corner stores with with an initiative that we were working with on getting fresh produce into corner stores. And that beginning organizing effort turned into us actually working on the staple foods legislation, where if corner stores are going to accept SNAP benefits or EBT or WIC, that they actually have to sell more than chips and juices. They have to sell whole grain pasta. They have to sell produce. They have to sell, real food, because this is about real food for real people. If you're going to hold people who receive SNAP benefits accountable to not be able to purchase shrimp or steak, then let's hold the places in our community accountable to actually sell and offer real food to people who come there and spend their benefits. So we got some policy changed around the staple food ordinance. We also got the farm stand bill. We worked on that. There was a law that, if I hope I'm not mistaken or misspeaking, this was a long time ago, but there were some rules around how long you could sell produce if you grew it locally. And in Minnesota, we have about a 110-day growing season if we count the harvest in September and October. So why can't we have access to sell that produce for a longer time? And now we have our young people working on that Healthy, Hungry, Free Schools campaign, where we're looking to get legislation passed. It's like right now there's a rule that you have to qualify for free or reduced lunch to get your free or reduced lunch. But what if kids don't qualify for free or reduced lunch? And their parents still can't afford to pay for their breakfast or their lunch? So that's some legislation that we're talking about, is really actually getting breakfast and lunch to all children. And I know that Bertrand has done some great work at the Minneapolis public school level, just changing the types of food that's being served to our children in Minneapolis public schools from the nutrition center. And we, at some point in time, we met with him out in DC. We took our young people to the White House to meet with Michelle Obama's administration to talk about the Let's Move campaign and how that was important and collaborative to the work that we're doing, because we're talking about eating fresh, but we're also talking about keeping it moving. So you can't kind of do one without the other if your plan is to be healthy. So those are just a few of the past initiatives and some of the work that we've done around legislation. And again, I'm sure I'm missing some, because there was like 7 big policy changes, but those are just a few of the ones that are to the top of my mind now. But if you want to hear more details about it, you could reach out to me and I will do some research.
Great. We have time for one more question. So, what are some practical steps just for people who are interested in getting started, and, maybe they don't have a healthy lifestyle right now, but they're interested in getting a healthy lifestyle? How could they get started just in their daily lives? What are some changes they could make, to get started, towards a healthy lifestyle?
I often, and it's just, first of all, I want to say, understanding that it's a marathon, it's not a race, but listening to yourself, like, and not judging yourself and understanding that what you're eating may be in response to what you're enduring. I never knew that trauma and food had such a relationship. So just stopping and checking it in, like, okay, I've got this bag of chips again. Why do I have this bag of chips again? What do I like about these chips? I like the crunch. Okay, I can go get a salad. A salad has a crunch as well. But what I found out, and I'm only talking about it from the trauma piece because I know that we've all, as all humans, have endured such trauma that maybe what we're eating right now is not a result from us working towards our wanting to be healthy. And that may be your trauma speaking to you through some of the food choices you're having. And then for those people who are not enduring that type of trauma, just consider what you're eating. Consider how much time you take to plan your meals. Think about how much water you're intaking. I like to wake up every morning and just be grateful that I'm alive. And then I like to hydrate. I like to have my herbs and I like to handle my hygiene. So it's like my 3 H's. And then I look at my menu that I usually plan on Friday. And it's like a budget. So it's like a best guess. Like even if we have tacos that are like vegan tacos without shell, that are like forbidden black rice and purple cabbage topped with avocado salsa. If there's some of that left over and I don't cook that next meal, then I just take that meal to the following week. So planning out your meals, involving your family, right? Involving your family. You have to involve your family, asking your loved ones what would they like to eat, what's their favorite meal, writing down. I have a little recipe box right here next to me. When I talk to people and they share a recipe, I take that recipe and I write it down, or I have some herbs that I want to try. So my daughter wants to know what's barley grass and she wants a pesto recipe. And she loves quinoa. So hearing from your loved ones what they want to eat, being more planful and intentional with your meals, and challenging yourself. Set the timer for 30 minutes and see if you can cook a meal in 30 minutes. You cannot cook a meal and clean the kitchen in 30 minutes. But if the kitchen is already cleaned, you can cook a meal in 30 minutes. So I would say that's just some of the things, and challenging yourself to like try and research one new piece of produce that you've never had before. Our vegetable this week is artichoke, and we bought two because she said I probably wouldn't cook one as good as her. So making it a contest, making it fun for children. I ruined my artichoke already, and so she was right. So there's one more artichoke left, and so we're watching YouTube videos. How do you cook artichoke? How do you steam it? How do you eat it? And she has to make the next artichoke. So just setting aside some time to think about your thinking. It's the metacognition, I guess, around food. And even that, I think that type of engagement sets your body up with that peace mindset that I talked about, where when you consume your food, it will bring peace.
Do you have any closing thoughts, Princess?
I do have closing thoughts. I want to say that food is important. We have people who are working in the movements around housing, employment, economic equality, education. We none of us want to live in a community that's not safe. We want safety. And I really believe that regardless of what part of the movement you're working on, that food plays a role in the service that you bring. Food plays a role in all of those areas. When we look back at a lot of the movements, like the Panthers movement, they were giving food. Like that should be the first priority. It's a basic human need. And I do know that it's not about big change. It's about the little change that you see in your household, on your plate, in your tummy, and in the smiles on your family's face. And if you want to share with Appetite for Change a recipe or a question or an idea or a thought, we are still harvesting from the community. And you might say, well, I don't live in North Minneapolis. Remember, our community is real food for real people. So our community is full of real people who are just interested in real food. And I want to thank everybody for letting me be here and having interest and appetite for change and supporting our mission. You called us a leader in food justice. And I really received that humbly, because it's been a trying 10 years to talk about changing and shifting the culture and even shifting the ideas of what people think is possible, coming from a community that is so overburdened and dealing with such disparities, and who's really maybe gotten a negative rap on what we like to eat and what we're about. So I thank you for that opportunity to shift that narrative. And I'm going to let everybody know you also can follow us on social media. I believe we're on Facebook and we're on Instagram. And you can sign up for our newsletter because it's always packed with great ideas. We did a piece on soul food being superfood, really changing that narrative about soul food. And we have some blogs on our page, and it really comes from what we hear from the community. So you've opened your computers and you've opened your ears and your hearts to our message. Please share back with us. The conversation has to continue as we continue to work towards getting real food to real people in the mission of food as the tool for health, wealth, and social change.
Everything starts with health, and without health, it's tough to do anything. As Princess said earlier, health is wealth. That's why a person's health is their greatest wealth. Food is a fundamental building block to physical health, which is interconnected with a person's mental, emotional, and social well-being. That's why the work that Princess and Appetite for Change are doing is so important. Much of that work overlaps with many of LHENA's priorities, including our food share program, building community, establishing relationships beyond our neighborhood borders. This talk from Princess was a great opportunity to learn new ideas from an organization that is making a huge impact on our city of Minneapolis. To help continue this momentum, I want to announce 2 upcoming events LHENA has planned. Tomorrow, September 23rd at 6:30 p.m., we're having a Ward 10 City Council Candidate Forum. Ward 10 residents will have the opportunity to hear directly from candidates about their interest in the role, their priorities, and their vision for the ward and Minneapolis at large. The forum will focus on small business recovery and infrastructure, and is the first of 2 forums, Ward 10 City Council Candidate Forums, LHENA will have. You can get more information and register for the forum on LHENA's Facebook page in the events section. Then a week from this Saturday on October 2nd in Mueller Park, we're having a community festival from 12 to 4 p.m. LHENA has partnered with Draw, a venture that provides community therapy through drawing, to have this free and family-friendly event for all ages. We'll have a coloring contest with prizes, local business vendors, live music, delicious food for purchase from Abby's Salvadoran Restaurant and Sadie's Taste of Love food truck, free ice cream from Sebastian Joe's, and more. Check out LHENA Facebook event page or the LHENA website events section for more info. Bringing people together is how we build community and create health, wealth, and social change in our community. This is what Princess and Appetite for Change are doing every day. It's what Clarence and Human Partnership are doing. And it's what LHENA is doing. We need more people in our communities in Minneapolis, young and old, to continue to do this work together to create community that works for everyone. It's not always easy, but it's worth the effort. If we continue to get enough people moving in the right direction, we can create a Minneapolis that works for all people. I want to thank Princess for being our speaker for this great LHENA Talk tonight. Also want to thank Clarence Jones and Human Partnership for sponsoring it. And I want to thank everyone who joined us in the audience for participating in this LHENA Talk. If you know anyone who wasn't able to join us, let them know the talk was recorded and will be available for viewing in the future at their convenience. Our next LHENA Talk will be Wednesday, October 27th at 7 p.m. with Lisa Clemens. Lisa is the founder and director of a Mother's Love Initiative, a grassroots organization in Minneapolis that is working to reduce gun violence, domestic violence, and build strong families with strong futures. Lisa's talk will focus on public safety in Minneapolis and pushing for peace. Until then, please keep supporting local businesses, keep showing up for local events, and keep giving back to the community. Look for ways to get involved with organizations such as Appetite for Change and Human Partnership who are doing positive work in the community, and help them continue to do good work. It takes a village for a community to thrive, and we are all in this together, putting positive energy and actions into our communities, how we can strengthen our community and help our whole community grow stronger. Thank you all again for participating in this LHENA Talk. Until next time, have a good night.
That's it.